Good morning and welcome to the webinar Getting to Know Ark Patent Intelligence. My name is Leighton Howard. I'm the founder and CEO of GenericsWeb, the company responsible for building the Ark Patent Intelligence suite of products. I'm going to take you through the products today to give you an indication of how you might use them to identify opportunities in drug development or to analyze what others may be doing in drug development as well. The webinar is going to be split into two sections. The first section is going to focus more on the key patents and ancillary data supporting pipeline decisions and looking at key information, key constraint data to determine when you might want to launch or when somebody might want to launch. And the second part of the webinar is going to be focused on the in-depth patents, which is the section that relates primarily to our comprehensive patent searching, which is also available via the Ark Patent Intelligence interface now. We're going to take some questions at the end of the section. So please feel free to ask questions via the webinar chat screen, and I'll do my best to answer them. Okay, well, the assumption here is that everybody has a basic understanding of drug development, and hopefully a little bit of an understanding of IP. So what we're going to do is do a little search initially. This is the dashboard that you can see in front of you. This is where you first enter when you log into the database, and you can do a few things here, such as check your subscriptions or edit your details and add users to subscriptions, etc., etc. Or if you're in a real hurry, you can do a quick search for a particular drug name and enter it in here. What we're going to do today, though, is just start with a little bit more of a complex search. We're just going to look for some products which may have some patent expiry information, a key patent expiry in Western Europe in 2022. Now, I understand that the webinar is intended to be focused on North America, but really I'm just trying to show you the power of the database and the interface that you can use to search. So, obviously, key patent information is something that is often used to make decisions on selection of pipeline. So we're going to use that data in the key patents module here to try and identify some INNs, molecules that are going to be of some relevance to us. So firstly, we're going to select extension expiry in 2022. And we're just going to select the whole year there. So we're basically looking for anything that has an extension expiring in 2022. And then we're going to add another selection criteria, which is we want all products which have an SPC in Europe, which we think is susceptible to challenge based on the expiry date because it's using incorrect marketing authorization. That's what these SPC validity flags are. And also we are going to select the country coverage of Western Europe just to complete our search step. So you can see when I click on the country coverage, there's lots of countries that you can choose from. I'm just using this for illustrative purposes. The other thing that I'm going to do as well is maybe just restrict it to a certain ATC code, or at least a category thereof, which is G for genitourinary medications. Then I'll click on the search button. So what we're going to see here is a list of INNs which meet those fairly limited search criteria. Now, as that information loads up, you can see on the left-hand side of the results screen that you have a range of filters. Now, these filters do mirror the original search criteria that you saw on the advanced search screen. So you can use those to refine the data that you have in front of you and restrict the list of INNs that you wish to view. Based on the assumption that we might not be interested in combination products, we can effectively open up a few of these products here and have a look at the information. But rather than do this in key patents, where we're just looking at key patent information, what I'm going to do is just go across to the INN snapshot, which shows a little bit of information for each of those products from each of the modules. So it makes it much easier to compare data and to see what is happening across different molecules. So let's say, for example, I wanted to view these 3 molecules, or let's just say these 2 molecules for the sake of time. I can open up any of the information screens that I want to see just by clicking on the box using Show Screen. And that information will just load up while we're waiting. And similarly, for another molecule, I might just do the same. And just open up that information as well. So I can see from just looking at this information, general information, I can see the molecular form, the indications, etc., etc. I can see there's marketing information, marketing authorization information there, constraint analysis, litigation in depth. Now, this information is not looking great for this particular molecule, so what I'm going to do is select the fesoteridine molecule there, and we're going to have a look at that in a little bit more depth, because that looks of some interest. So general information is that molecule's it's a Pfizer product. It's for treatment of symptoms of an overactive bladder. So it comes up in our G category, ATC category that we selected. And it's a small molecule, obviously. It's not I'm going to skip over the notes section. I'm going to come back to that in a moment. The marketing authorizations, we can see very clearly that there's Canadian, EU, and US marketing authorizations. So let's have a little bit of a closer look at those, just to see what information we can glean. And all of this will provide good background for when we actually dig into the patent information in a moment to work through the case study. So the marketing authorizations only cover a few major territories. It's more to give you an indication of what product is marketed rather than to list all of the places where it's marketed. So you can see there that in the USA there's it's marketed by Pfizer. All of the presentations are as a fumarate salt, brand name Tobias, and it's an extended release tablet in 4 milligrams and 8 milligrams in oral presentation. So, as I mentioned before, you've got an EU authorization, you've got 2 Canadian, the 2 strengths in Canada, and you've got 2 strengths in the USA as well. So that's about as much information as we can get from that. The next section down is the constraint analysis. Now that contains a lot of information on key patents. What we're actually going to do first, though, is just have a look at the data exclusivity and see what sort of timings we're talking about in terms of when can we launch this product. So, or when can we actually file for approval? So when do we need to start development to take advantage of perhaps a new paragraph 4 filing, or perhaps any early launch opportunities in Europe. So essentially, wherever you see a plus sign, you can open up that information. Where you see a scroll bar, there's often a lot more information if you scroll down. Let's take a look at Austria as a representative of Europe. I'm sure most of you will know that European data exclusivity is harmonised. And so what we actually have here is the first EU marketing authorisation date of 2007, and an NCE, a new chemical entity. So that's the data exclusivity proportion of the 8+2+1 and data exclusivity that's available in Europe for this particular molecule, because it was filed after the cut-off date for the 8+2+1. You can see that there's firstly an 8-year data exclusivity period, and then also there's a marketing exclusivity period of 10 years. So that's the +2 of the 8+2+1. So effectively, we can't file for a generic product until 2015, and we can't launch a generic product until 2017 based on data exclusivity alone. Similarly, when you look at Canada, you've got a new chemical entity, so data exclusivity of 2018, which is 6 years after the launch. It was launched a lot later in Canada than it was in the EU. And then 2 years after that, you've got a marketing exclusivity expiry as well. Just scrolling all the way down to the US, you can see that the data exclusivity, the standard 5-year data exclusivity, expires in the US in 2013, which is 5 years after the first national MA date in the US, i.e. the FDA approval date. Now, obviously, if you're filing a paragraph 4 or filing an ANDA with a paragraph 4 certification, that data exclusivity date slides back to 4 years, and so that would take us back to the end of 2012 for filing of applications in the US. So, given that there may be some, some patent activity or some challengeable patents relating to this product, we expect to see some activity in the US at least by now. One way that we can tell what some companies are doing and what the intent is to have a look at DMS. So again, this just provides a little bit of background to the patent information. We're gathering information here to see if we can identify what's happening in the background here. So by clicking on the DMS, you can instantly see that all of the DMS are in the US. They're to a range of different companies. Most of them are in India. However, there's some in Slovenia, or one in Slovenia. Looks like there's one in Italy, Brazil, and there are a couple of others on the next page as well, which I won't flick through to. But effectively, what we can see here is that there is a large number of APIs with DMS filed in the US. Now, DMS is not necessarily an indication of much, but it does show an intent, if there are a number of DMS, that there's some activity in this region at the very least. The other thing that we can glean from looking at the DMS is the actual type of active ingredients. So everybody's making a fumarate salt. None of these companies have actually ventured into different salts, etc., which is sometimes the case when there are some salt patents that could be challengeable, for example. Now, another thing that we can look at in Ark Patent Intelligence is the dossiers. This isn't a comprehensive list, but again, it shows you where we are in the life cycle of the molecule. If there are a number of dossiers available, it suggests that we're quite mature and that there's going to be a lot of competition. If there's only a couple available, then it suggests that we're at the early stages of companies developing these products. And you can see there that Intas has a dossier available there. That again just suggests there's some preparation going on for launch around the world. Now, just one final bit of ancillary information that we can look at is the news. So just opening up the news articles here, we can see that there's a couple of articles relating to litigation, and that when you expand those news articles out, you can see that actually opens up a lot more information about what's going on. So it looks like Pfizer sued a couple of companies for filing paragraph 4 certifications. And then obviously you can click through to the article if you need to read a little bit more information. But there seem to be a number of companies involved in this litigation in the US. Now, that leads us on to the litigation tab. So what is that litigation? Rather than just rely on the news articles, which are often very scant in terms of the information, we can go straight into the litigation section and have a much closer look at what's going on. Now again, everything's broken down into individual molecules, so you can see here that we have the versatility, which you can expand, and it says in each of the sections how many countries we've identified litigation, how many patents in those countries are being litigated, and how many cases have been identified relating to that number of patents. So here we have 7 patents in the USA being litigated in a total of 12 cases, which is quite a lot. Now, if you want to see the summary details of those cases, you can very easily just open it up and have a look at what is involved. And just reading through the summary of the case, you can see quite clearly that Pfizer and UCB together are looking at litigating these cases, and they're the ones that have filed the complaints against the individual companies that have filed ANDAs. You can see just by flicking through, we've got Alchem, we've got Sandoz, Wockhardt, Apotex, Hetero, some of the usual suspects there, who are all involved in the litigation, probably in response to the paragraph 4 filing. In fact, if you read the summary of the case, that's exactly what it says. The infringement action relates to what appears to be 5 molecule patents and 2 formulation patents, according to the summary there as well. And if you need to see a little bit more information on the litigation card, you can open the litigation card, and up that will pop into a new window, and you can drill down and have a little bit of a look at what other information is available, the patent numbers, the judges, case numbers, etc., etc. Often we'll have a link to a document, so you can see here there's a link to the actual complaint. So if you want to have a read of what's going on in a particular case with your morning coffee, then it's very easy to do just by clicking on the link, loading up the document and having a read. Probably just selected a very large document there, so I won't wait for that to load, but I'm sure you understand the point that I'm making. Okay, so we've had a look at the litigation. So what is being litigated here? Now, we're going to have a look at the key patents. And while I show you the key patents, what I'm going to do is just explain to you how a patent becomes a key patent according to our system. Now, what we do is we track patents within families which have one of the following: either a member in the Orange Book, either a member in the Canadian Patent Register, which have a member which have an extension of some description on its own, that being a pharmaceutical patent term extension, or has been litigated. So any patent that's litigated we consider to be of commercial significance for a particular product, so it becomes, the family becomes key in our eyes. And so we're listed in the key patent section as being those commercially important patent families that you need to know about. Now, just while you have a look at this particular view here for versatility, you can see straight away at the top there's an INN constraint comment. Now that comment is a manually written comment which is based on the flagging of patents within the families, and those flags are essentially sitting next to the families here and here. Now the idea is that we're indicating here whether or not that patent family is constraining. If it contains a red flag, then it's all of the patents in the family are constraining. If it contains red and green flags, then there are some patents which are not constraining and some which are red constraining. Now, when we determine what is constraining, we say that if you can essentially circumvent this patent technically and still end up with a product which is considered to be a generic equivalent, then it's not constraining. However, if circumventing the patent would mean that you end up with a product which is not considered to be a generic, then the patent is constraining. You can also see here these icons which explain exactly why the patent family is included. So it'd be one of those methods that I mentioned before. It's worthwhile noting, though, that for each family there are a different set of circumstances which result in the family being included. There is no one method of identifying a patent family as being commercially significant, which is reliable. You can't simply use the Orange Book, you can't simply use extensions, or you can't simply use litigation. So it's important to combine the methodology to make sure that you get a good solid set of key patents to look at least initially. Now, what I'm going to do here is go to a separate view. I just want to have a look at those US patents which have actually litigated. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the US. I'm going to restrict the results set to US, and I've just changed the view to a family list so that we only see the US patents here. So if you just bear with me while I select the country coverage here. Very simple to do. Select one country, and then don't forget to click the update button. And essentially that list of patent families and patents in pretty much every family we've identified there gets condensed down to those ones that that we've identified as being key just in the US. Now here's a few things that are quite interesting. We have here a patent which has got a red flag, which means we consider it to be constraining. Now, if we roll over that constraint comment, it basically tells us that yes, this patent family is constraining. And if we roll over the patent itself, the family information itself, it says that this patent is not listed in the US Orange Book. So it's a constraining patent for versatility, but it's not listed in the US Orange Book. It is also, it happens to be one of the few patents that is not litigated, one of the few key patents for versatility that is not litigated. So that's obviously a reason why it's not being litigated, is that it's not listed in the Orange Book in the first place. It doesn't form part of the Waxman-Hatch provisions which allow the litigation to ensue on filing the paragraph 4 certification. So that's an interesting patent that we're going to keep an eye on. There is also a second patent, which if we roll over the family here, it says it's a molecule patent, but it's actually a salt or a hydrate or a solvate. So that's the category that it's in. And the family comment says that it's a versatility in acid salts, preferably fumaric or hydrochloric acid. It doesn't specify that it's fumaric or hydrochloric acid. It just says that it's preferable. So what we might do is we're going to pop that family out into a new window. I'm going to have a look at it in a little bit more detail. But just while that's loading, actually, I think what we might do is have a little look at some other information that we have on the screen. On the right-hand side, you'll see a whole bunch of litigation flags. Now, this is another way of checking if a patent has been litigated. There'll be a flag there. So just looking at these flags, there's no flag for the first patent we mentioned. There's certainly a flag for the 650 patent there. There are a couple of patents in this family which don't have litigation flags, so there could be a question as to why that is. The reason is actually because those patents are not listed in the US Orange Book. All of the other patents actually have the litigation flags on them. And again, in the other family, there are a few patents which are not being litigated, but the entire family is green, so it's as in it's not constraining. So that's something that we're not as concerned about. Let's have a look at that salt family. When we pop up this particular view, you'll see all of the constraint flags down the left-hand side. So you can see that every single patent in that salt family is considered to be not constrained. Now, the reason our analysts would have done that is because they would say, well, there's a salt patent. It might protect every single salt, but we could get around that by perhaps not using a salt at all, by using the basic form, for example. So technically, this isn't a blocking patent if you can get around it using an amorphous form, or maybe not an amorphous form, a basic form, or by using a solvent. But let us have a look at that patent. We'll grab the US version of the patent, the one that's being litigated, and simply by clicking on the patent, and then you can have a look at it page by page. And I'll pause the image. And we can see the claims there. To apologise on our downloads, but hopefully, we'll get this soon enough. There we go. So we now have the claims here, and you can see that essentially the claim is for compounds of this general formula that effectively have an acid salt, and the general formula is for cetodine, by the way, and it's effectively with an acid residue of a physiologically compatible inorganic or organic acid. So it's a very broad patent there. Now, that's being litigated. It's also worthwhile noting that that particular patent in the US, bearing in mind that you can only select one patent to actually have a Section 156 extension on. This is the patent that Pfizer have selected to have the extension on. So it could be a bit risky because they're selecting a patent which technically could be circumvented, but also it's a patent which to me strikes me as being a little weak. So it could be that they've put the extension on a patent just to get the extra time that may give them, because it was a later filed patent. But in doing so, they could have actually put the extension on a patent which is more susceptible to challenge, which is something we'll obviously find out in the ensuing litigation as well. Now, what we're going to do is just have a little look at the SPC analyzer. Now, again, I understand that this is very much a US-focused webinar, but what I'd like to do is just discover why this particular patent is being included as a key patent, and how it's being treated in the rest of the world, and that will give you an indication of what might be important in the US at a later stage. So I've just removed that country coverage there. And then what we'll do is we'll open up the SPC analyzer. First, we need to go to the family details view. And the idea of the SPC analyzer is that it's a graphical view of where in the world extensions of pharmaceutical extensions of term have been filed and granted. You can see from on the right-hand side the different families, what they relate to. So as per the key patents that you saw, there's molecule patents, there's a general patent, a specific patent, i.e. selection patent, there's a formulation patent, and then there's the salt patent as well. All of which have been used as the basis for an extension of term in one of the countries that we cover. We can see in the US that the salt patent is the one that's got the extension on it, as we mentioned before. And then as we have a look in Europe, we can see that very few of the patents there actually use the salt patent as the basis for an extension. There's the patents in Europe all tend to use the two molecule patents, so the specific molecule patent and the general molecule patent. Now, if you look at the expiry dates of those SPCs, they're exactly the same. The first EU marketing authorization date that they're based on is the same. So effectively, you have two valid patents there with two valid SPCs there, which expire in 2022. Now that's well and good. So you might ask the question, well, why in Europe didn't Pfizer choose to file for an SPC on the salt patent? Would be a very good question. I don't know the answer to that. Probably because the EU legislation is a little bit tighter than to allow that to happen. And so what I'm doing here is just having a look at the matrix view, which shows all of the patent families in columns, and then down the left-hand side is the country. So if you're looking at a particular country, you can very easily just look across all of the patent families that we've identified as key and just review all of the information there as well. Now if we look at this first family, which is the salt patent, it expires in 2020. Now there's no extension identified for any of those patents in any of the European countries, and if we then go across and look at the molecule patents with the SPC extensions on, they all expire in about 2022. So this salt patent in Europe is effectively worthless unless there are some holes in the molecule patent protection. So you can see here that Bosnia and Herzegovina has no European molecule patent protection there. It also has no protection via the salt patent. So we could do that comparison all the way down. And for the sake of brevity, what we can identify is Turkey, for example, doesn't have any molecule patent protection. Neither of the molecule patent families have a Turkish equivalent there. However, the salt patent is protected in Turkey. So if you wanted to launch a product in Turkey, you wanted to take advantage of the fact that the molecule patent had not been launched, had not been protected, then you would first need to find a different version, a different version to one that actually contains salt. So you can see that the matrix view there provides you with a very good summary, a very good way of clicking around. Now you can manipulate this either by using the filters before you do the search, or you can take out families that are irrelevant just by clicking on the little crosses there. So you can make this view pretty much as you would like to see it, and then you can either restore it all, or you can export that information out to an Excel spreadsheet where you can manipulate the data with a little bit more flexibility there as well. Now we're going to go back to the key patent there, to the key patent view again, and just show you again what it is that we've identified here. So we've got a molecule which is has got a US equivalent, but it is not protected by, it is not being litigated, and it's not listed in the US Orange Book. It is the patent that in the rest of Europe is being used as the basis for SPC extension, so it is obviously commercially significant. The second patent family is listed in the Orange Book. Isn't the one that has the US Section 156 extension on it, but is being litigated, and also is the one that in Europe is the basis for a lot of extensions as well. The salt patent is the one which is quite broad. And it is the one where the extension is filed in the US. And so I would say that a lot of the success of the litigation is based on that patent being revoked. Even if the litigants are successful in revoking the molecule patents and the formulation patents, if the salt patent doesn't go down, then it's going to be very hard for a company to actually get on the market. And also with this early molecule patent as well, not being litigated as of yet, that effectively prevents a generic from coming on the market until I believe it's 2019. Now we've seen that in the EU we've got, as I say, SPCs filed on both the molecule patents. They expire in 2022, but there are some holes which you can exploit, in terms of identifying countries where there are no SPCs, which we saw from the SPC view. You can see there's a lot of countries there where there doesn't appear to be any extensions. And if you focus purely on the EU, you can see that there are plenty of holes in there in certain smaller markets where at least all you have to do is wait for the data exclusivity period to expire before you can launch. So overall, just from 30 minutes analysis, you can see that that Pfizer has some very solid patent protection there surrounding the fesoterodine product. And I guess in Europe it seems that the 15 years marketing life of a pharmaceutical product is actually going to be adhered to there. It doesn't look like they're going to be able to extend that by any further. And as far as we can tell, although it is fairly early days for Europe yet, the molecule patents are likely to stay in place for the simple reason that in order for there to be any purpose in litigating one of the molecule patents, they both have to be litigated and successfully revoked at the same time.